All right, guys, so now we're gonna be getting off our bellies. This is more realistic, and I'm gonna be teaching you how to build your position in any position, right? So nothing changes. First things first, with tripods, is what we look for is regardless of the position, we want the head to be right around sternum level, maybe just above it. So when the rifle's on top, I can be upright the whole time and the rifle is where I need it to be. So for sitting position, it doesn't matter. Kneeling position, doesn't matter. Standing, doesn't matter. It's all the same. Shooting is shooting. So what do I say about body position in the prone? Directly behind the gun, right? What are you supposed to do for standing, you think? Directly behind the gun. So it all comes down to recoil management. Now here's the kicker. What happens when I get off the gun, or I'm sorry, off my belly, and now I'm aiming at a target downrange, and what do I start to see? It's called a wobble zone. You'll start to see your reticle start to move because of stability issues. Ideally, that wobble does not fall outside of the size of the target. Now you got two types. You'll have an infinity sign, and you'll have a figure 8. You're muscling the gun into the target and your body is trying to fight it, and you're getting that infinity symbol going on. Now, if I'm getting more of that figure 8 up and down, same thing on and off the target in excess amounts, I'm off on the vertical plane on my natural point of aim. So what that means is I need to widen my base or I need to bring them in more. Whether it be standing like I am, or if I'm on my knees, I widen the knees and bring them closer in if need be. But that's the vertical plane. What do I not do? Well, what I don't do is I start inducing muscle. If I'm standing, I'm not squatting. My knees are not gonna be bent because now I'm firing my hamstrings and my glutes and muscles fatigue. So it's not stable, it's not as stable, and it's not sustainable either. So I'll demonstrate standing for the sake of it. Now, tripods, buy one. Buy a tripod. It is more likely to be used than your rear bag in the real world. So learn how to set it up efficiently. So standing, like I just got this tripod, but I can damn near get it right exactly where I need it. So I know with this leg, I'm just gonna go to right about there on all of them, just pre-stage it. And now I'll pop these two, go full extension, and this makes me fast at setting up the tripod. All right, now it's right about where I need it. So when the rifle's on, I prefer a little bit wider base versus straight up. That's just my own personal preference. So I go a little bit lower than right about here. That's just me. Now, understand the mount you have. So you might have a ball head that's down here, and then you might on top, so my MUB right there, that tack table as some people call it, some people will run those on top of the tripod and then run that kind of bag and slap it on top. Well, now the new base is the top of the bag. So if I get this right about here and now I put that bag on top, I'm gonna be like on my tippy toes trying to get to the rifle. So account for that. And that's with any barricade. So you want 2 legs back, 1 leg front. Why do I do that? Stability with recoil, right? If this comes back, where's energy transfer? Back on 2 legs. So put it on 1 leg. Well, that time it went left, and that time it went right. Left and right. It's not stable. So we want 2 legs back, 1 leg front. The only time I can see having 1 leg back is an extreme high angle or low angle shot. And the reason for that is because I can move this head and articulate it at an extreme angle, and then I can get under this to shoot. And that's why I would want 1 leg back for that scenario. I promise you, we don't have that kind of angle here in Ohio. Now, reason I started my minimum adjustments with the smallest, thinnest legs, you see how they're getting a little bit thicker, is for stability purposes. I don't want to fully extend these, but then I'm only shortening the fat one. I want to use all the thickest ones I can possibly use on the legs before having to resort to the thinnest kind for stability reasons. Does that make sense? Perfect. All right, so for for this target, or for this drill, I'm gonna go to the 700 IPSC in the middle of the field, which we've been doing. Or actually, I'll go to the one on the left because it's cleaner. Nothing changes with this whatsoever. I build that position. I identify what my target is, right? I know my target. I'm gonna square my body to said target, right? Go back. That's my target. Square my body to it. That way I don't have to fight it. I set my tripod up already pointing in that general direction. This helps reduce time it takes to get my natural point of aim aligned. Does that make sense, guys? So that's what we're striving for. Clearly the name of the game here, for me, is natural point of aim. And also points of contact, which you'll see that more, especially on these barricades. So, I'm gonna come up, I'm gonna mount the gun. Now, this is ARCA lock, ARCA Swiss, you'll hear different things. ARCA is usually what we call it. It's this rail right here on this, and it goes all the way out on mine. Jed, looks like you have ARCA, is that a little slot for it? So does Matt. So a lot of guys here have ARCA. It's kind of the go-to standard in the industry. I definitely recommend them. They're very adaptable and you can pop in and out of very easily. Now, if you have Picatinny, there's different types of heads. This one will lock into Picatinny as well. So if you have a Pic gun and you want to try this and it's got a Picatinny base, you can slap it on this and it'll still work. If you have hog saddles, who's familiar with hog saddles? You? All right, so hog saddles are like just your squared ones. It's just a base that's a square and you throw the rifle in it. That's what I was trained on in the Marine Corps. That's what Rick grew up with too in the Marine Corps. They weren't bad for the M40A5 because it was running a Macmillan A4 stock, which is squared. So the square and the square kind of works. I mean, we learned shapes and fitting shapes in pre-K, hopefully. So it wasn't bad there. Where you run into issues is a lot of the modern guns aren't squared like that, and it's not very stable. On top of that, the tripods were trash that we had. The heads were trash. And back then, the techniques we were being taught on was also trash. So how we set the tripod up is paramount to success. What's my favorite fundamental? Natural point of aim, very important. All right, so I've identified my target. I already see it's off, so I'm just gonna adjust this real quick. Get the two tripod legs back. We see how this rifle is pretty much right where I need it to be. I'm not having to get down here to get to it. And I'm also not squatting. So if this was lower, see how I just got lower? I didn't squat, I just widened my base, right? I need to come higher, come on up. That's all I'm doing. I don't want to be far back and then leaning into it, and now you see I lost my balance and now my center of gravity is forward of me. So balance points are very key. Depends how you built your rifle out and finding where that balance point is. Usually it's right up in front of the mag well is where the balance point is, where you can kind of hold it and you can see it's kind of balancing itself. That's your balance point. Different methods for different things that you can do as far as that goes. I could probably, if I had a heavier suppressor, it would about even out to about here. Now, as far as locking in, there's two different ways. You can do it right here on this rifle, or you can go a little bit further out. Play with it, see which one you like more. I personally just prefer this method. And this is a Really Right Stuff 34 tripod with an Anvil 30 arc head. So it's ARCA and Picatinny, and it has this lever on the side, which I just call a gas pedal, and I can control it. So I loosen that, and now at this point, my hand's on it, if you can't see on this side, and I can do what? Get the cant out of the gun, right? So you can't just lock in, you gotta make sure that your cant is still off. Just because you got off the ground, gravity doesn't forgive you for forgetting cant. So I'm gonna get on the gun, I look over my optic. No point in finding through the optic when I should just get over the optic for a gross sight picture. Now I refine it on here. And I'm already in the general area, right? So I'm gonna make sure the cant is out, check my bubble, get it pretty aligned. Lock it in, adjust the parallax. All right, dial my elevation on. 4-5, dial 4-5. All right. All the other fundamentals still come into play, right? I'm still gonna go through my breathing cycle. I've still gotta focus on a clean execution of my trigger control. And those of you behind me, you can still see my body is squared behind the rifle, right? All right. So let's see how this works, what I'm feeling for wind. All right. Impact. And that's what we're looking for, guys, right? So I was able to follow through, stick with it, recoil settles, I recover, observe where it impacted, whether it was on the target or off the target. Even if it was on the target, we still want to hit center of target, right? Adjust till you get center. That's just a rundown of how it looks standing. I would do the exact same thing in the kneeling, high kneeling, low kneeling, or prone, and I can show you those positions as far as how the barricades work. So I snap out of this, I'll show you on this. Orr, whose last name's Orr? Can I borrow your bag? Matt, can you throw me that bag? Thank you. All right. So, points of contact, right? I want points of contact. So, I'm not gonna try and set this up right here, and now I'm off the barricade, and I'm just trying to do all this. What I'm gonna try and do is get on it if I can. This is my personal preference, and get as many points of contact on this as I possibly can. Sometimes your mag is gonna prohibit you from this. This is my 10 rounder, it's a little longer. Sometimes you have no choice and you just gotta deal with the barricade that you got. So I'm gonna come on, my arm is resting on this. I'm still applying that rearward pressure, right? So I come on, check cant. Make sure you're not torquing the mag into it or you'll run into a malfunction like that. Impact, and that's how you do that from there. I observe, see where it is. It's not as stable as that tripod, but you make do with what you got. Now, another thing that contributes to the wobble zone, what will give you more wobble is increased pressure, whether forward on the gun into the barricade or that rearward pressure into you. But what do I gain with that increased pressure, whether rearward or forward into the barricade? What do I get a benefit of? I get recoil good job. I get better recoil management. So yeah, my wobble zone kind of opens up a little bit because I'm inducing more pressure, but I gain the benefit of being able to follow through better and get right back on target. I'm managing that recoil better. If I loosen that pressure up, what happens to the wobble zone? A little less, right? I get less wobble. It's more stable. I'm not applying as much pressure to the gun. But what do I lose? I lose a little bit of recoil management. So who's heard of free recoil? Jed, you have? All right. So let's see what happens at a 500-yard target with free recoil. I'll just touch the trigger. I'll just get the gun on, set it up, lock it in. All right, we'll see what happens. All right, and I press. Still hit it, right? I have no fucking clue where that round went though. So that's a dramatic effect of not being on the gun, right? That's free recoil. So a lot of people are advocates of free recoil. I am not one of them. I don't think the benefits outweigh the cons of it. So what happens is there is zero wobble because it is just locked in and staying there, and I just touch the trigger. That was even just my left hand. I'm not even left-handed, but it's locked in and it's stable. But I also have no clue what's going on. So, quick debrief as far as positional shooting. Square your body, natural point of aim. Test out what works for you as far as pressures go on the weapon system to adjust the wobble zone and see what works for you. There's some cases where I'll want more recoil management, but if it's a much smaller target, I might ease up on that pressure and sacrifice some recoil management so my wobble zone can get inside that size of target as best as I can possibly do it. And then on top of that, if I didn't already say it, points of contact, that's paramount. And don't forget the other fundamentals. Also, do not forget about cant. You can still easily induce cant off your belly. All right, so the same building of a position, building the position does not change whatsoever from prone to standing or anywhere in between. It's all the same. You square your body behind the rifle. You see how I chose to run my hand out here, right? I wasn't going too far, and now what are my shoulders? Yeah, they're off center from where the direct amount of energy is coming from on the rifle, which is there. So I get behind it as best as I possibly can. Do not, in barricades, you see some people do it. I'm not an advocate for it, of putting my hand on the objective bell itself. The reason for that is sometimes you may see, if you apply pressure on that too much, you can deviate your point of impact. So that's something I still need to test, but my buddy had told me about it at 100 yards. And they tested it and they saw some issues. Now, if you want to put it up here or whatever, I don't see an issue with doing that. I try to avoid touching the scope altogether. One other thing to be aware of, do not contact the barrel on anything or your suppressor. This is a free-floating system. We want to keep it that way, right? Because what happens if my barrel's touching something? What does it affect? Harmonics. We want to be consistent in everything that we do, right? All right, so guys, any questions?